Hi, everyone. We are just going to give it a few minutes for people to tune in. So we'll kind of touch base here a couple minutes past the hour to kick things off. Just to restate for everybody joining now, we're giving it a couple of minutes for people to join, and then we'll kick things off in just a few minutes. All right, we'll do one more PSA. We're going to wait just one more minute while people continue to stream in, and we'll get started here in the next minute or two. All right, I think we can kick things off. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and a special thanks to our two speakers. I am incredibly excited to be leading a conversation with these two amazing women. They are entrepreneurs, brand builders, beauty experts and enthusiasts, industry leaders, creators. The list goes on and on. And we really want to spend today talking to them about the intersection of innovation and purpose, something that has driven them in their own professional pursuits and personal pursuits. We'll take the next 45 minutes really to hear from them. I'll pop in with some questions and guide the conversations, but we're really here to tap into their wealth of knowledge. Just a quick reminder for all of you in the audience, please use the Q&A feature to ask questions. We might grab a few throughout the conversation, and we'll definitely circle back at the end to ask questions directly as well from our panelists. So turning to you, Lisa and Melanie, innovation has really driven your careers. I'd love to have each of you take a little bit of time to tell us more about your professional journey and how innovation has really driven you to where you are today.
Sounds great. Well,
Melanie, let's start with you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie. I'm the president of Versed. And wow, to reflect on my career journey, just the biggest term that comes to mind is nonlinear. And it started with studying in university aerospace engineering and global environmental science. So I have exactly the wrong background to be running a beauty brand, at least a beauty brand 20 years ago. But as brands today are so much more than conventional businesses. We're driven by purpose, by innovation, by connection, by data, by science. It really has been such an incredible playground to put that part of my brain and skill set to use. I started working in sustainability and sustainable development planning and really missed flexing that creative part of my brain. I was in New York at the time, and I saw a crack of a window in marketing and brand building that just caught my attention, to be able to connect products and businesses with consumers and really dig into what those people want and need, and what are they feeling, what are their aspirations in life, and how does this product that they're thinking about, this category that they're thinking about, relate to that and support that. And that just became such an area of fascination and passion for me, and was most drawn to fashion and beauty, just two so emotionally driven businesses where there really is an opportunity to impart so much more than a functional message, and really connect with people and support them and be a part of their lives in such an incredible and impactful way. Also tend to be very female-driven industries, and it's certainly a community that I have loved being a part of. And I kept that sustainability part of it with me, and always had kind of one foot in with sustainable or eco brands at the time, and one foot in with more conventional brands back when, eco and sustainability was anything but cool. It was super granola. But that was just where so much innovation and potential was happening that I loved it. Along that path, I founded my first marketing firm, really geared towards connecting larger brands with these emerging millennial audiences through digital channels like Twitter and Facebook, and then Instagram. And through that, I started to work with Sephora, with Makeup Forever, with a number of really cool emerging designers that had just incredible points of view and missions. And that was where I really cut my teeth. I spent a few years with one of the largest contract manufacturers of beauty in the US following that. And that was where I really dug into the beauty industry and got to know formulation and chemistry, and was hit with just so many incredible realizations about the industry. You know, one of the biggest takeaways from that was that what separated a prestige product from a mass product was often not the formula. It was, you know, other aspects like maybe the componentry or the distribution, and just so many takeaways that could then, you know, be brought into Versed. Along that path, I spent some time on with Westfield working on their customer strategy and projects, and that was when I got to know Tribe really well, and then was brought to Who What Wear to lead their brand development and marketing, where they were doing just something so incredible with community co-creation and tapping into an audience of 16 million people and using them to power product development and marketing through all kinds of insights, both passive listening and active co-creation like focus groups and surveys. And it was using that methodology that I was then able to work with our CEO, Catherine, and a few of the other members of the Who What Wear crew at the time, and start to bring Verse together. So I've had the incredible privilege of leading Verse from pre-product, pre-distribution, pre-everything. And, you know, in those dozen or so years that I've been in this field, I think really that purpose aspect has become the rallying cry around innovation. So being able to create a new brand and do so with a community, understanding what's important to them, you know, what do they want to see different in the industry and the world. It's just been such an incredible way to bring something to life. And Verse is what has emerged from that. Our mission is to make clean skincare for everyone. We're the cleanest brand in drugstore skincare, which we're so proud of. And to us, clean is so much more than just our ingredient list. It flows through into our practices like being vegan and cruelty free, into our sustainability, which is a huge focus of what we do, and a front that we're so active on, and also just into how we talk and interact with our community, because we're really about democratization and clean and inviting more people to be a part of this movement.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, for me, I grew up with very severe eczema. I mean, you can't really cure yourself of eczema, so I still have eczema. And it was hard. Growing up, I had visible itchy rashes, and I thought, that's just my skin. That's how it's always going to be. And I grew up in Korea. And so when I was graduating high school, I was just fed up. I was like, I have to figure this out. So I went to esthetician school in Korea, and it was the most eye-opening experience, because all of a sudden, all of that guesswork I had done my whole life, there was now this structured framework I could apply to it. And I was like, wait, skincare, actually, there's a science behind it. There's like the histology of your skin. It's not just random marketing buzzwords or ingredients. There's like specific reasons these ingredients, when formulated the right way, will help my skin. And it wasn't instant. It was the starting point of really opening up my eyes to be a little more analytical about my skincare. And after that, you know, I went to college in the States, and I've been here since. I basically took the next few years with a lot of hands-on practice. I mean, my whole entire dorm room was like an apothecary, always facials. But really, it was in college, I started to see my skin completely transform, to the point where now when I say I have eczema, people are like, what? I can't even tell. And I never thought I would get compliments on my skin. And that was a really empowering feeling for me. It really changed my life. And so I had this passion of helping other people with their skin too, just because I'm like, oh, there's hope, guys. Like, whether it's a breakout, whether it's, you know, like persistent dark spots, what have you, like there is a way you can tackle that with like a very structured framework. And it's funny because, you know, 20 years later, as I'm working on Peach and the Lake, I get a lot of my college friends like will like email me and be like, you know, you used to like just tell me all of these skincare, like I was obsessed with it. I couldn't stop talking about skincare. But at that time, I didn't think that your job is something that you pursue that's like your personal hobby and passion. Mm-hmm. So, you know, at that time in New York, where I went to school, the thing to do was to become an investment banker, right? I had first heard the term iBanking. I actually thought it was like your eyeballs, like iBanking. And I was like, what is iBanking? But everyone's talking about it. Let me go try that too. And it was fine. Like I was at Goldman Sachs and I learned a lot, but I wasn't passionate about it. And I just thought, it's a job. You're not supposed to like love your job. It's supposed to be something you're learning and being challenged by. It's fine. And I was interviewing after my 2-year analyst program with like various private equity funds, just going down the path. And I had this moment where I was like walking out of that interview and I was like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. And at that time, it's so funny because looking back, I was so young and I was like having this crisis, like, and my parents were like, oh my gosh, you're so young. Like you can find something else you're interested in. So I went into consulting as a management consultant because you have like a broad opportunity to work on different projects. And I loved it. I was like loving what I was doing. And my boss at the time had gone to business school and was like, you might consider going to business school just because, you're going to like have exposure to a lot more things, et cetera. And it's funny, my dad's a lawyer. So I actually thought, I don't know why, in the back of my head, I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer one day. And I was like, no, I think I should go to law school because my LSAT score is expiring. And I just like, don't want to take that test again. Like not great reasons. And my boss convinced me that business school would be the better path. So I go to business school. And at that time I had gone during the financial crisis in 2008. And so, the whole school was very focused on like other ways that you can pursue a career, like entrepreneurial things. And it really struck me like, wow, I can marry my passion with the business world. And I really wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I couldn't really think of what. I had tried some fashion ideas. It wasn't really scaling. So after business school, I go back into consulting. And this whole time I'm percolating, I'm actually meeting with a friend every Wednesday, thinking about various startup ideas. And it was just this moment. After 2 years of like thinking through ideas, I was consulting for a beauty company, like a larger like beauty conglomerate. And one of the cosmetic chemists literally just made small talk with me. And he was like, did you know your country, Korea, makes like some of the best skincare? And I was like, wait, what? I always thought Korean skincare was amazing because I get such great feedback, but it's also, I just gave them a whole facial using these products. Of course, they're going to like it. But when the cosmetic chemists I ran into actually started going to like lab results and why these Korean beauty products were so interesting, like they're more stable, even though there aren't like certain chemicals in there or certain ingredients are actually absorbing better into the skin, like things that like you can't tell without lab equipment. I just had my aha moment where I was like, this is crazy. It's 2012. The world is so globalized. And yet in the States, when you're thinking about skincare, you want a lot of tools in your tool chest to be empowered to care for your skin. And you could find maybe like a couple Korean brands in the States in, big stores. And that was it. And even in sort of like Chinatown, Japantown, Koreatown, the assortment wasn't very big. And so that, like, I went to HR that day and I was working at the Boston Consulting Group and they made it easy. They were like, okay, open door policy, like you can try it and let's see how it goes. And if not, you're welcome back. So I had no savings, I had no plan. I just quit and decided like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was such a passion of mine. And I think the reason was that this whole time I had been giving facials for people. So I had heard so much, like nights and weekends where people are struggling with their skin, and yet some of these products that could really help that are so innovative are not available. So that passion just really overtook me really. And that was, the start of Peach and Lily, in 2012. And the mission was really simple. It was to be a company where we can really help people transform their skin and just empower them. And that's a single-minded mission, and everything we do is oriented around that. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I guess my career path flowed. And then there was this like common thread of skincare all throughout that I didn't even realize, but from like a personal place. So yeah, that's how it all unfolded. And I think on the innovation front, that's been a really big like foundation for the business, because obviously Korean beauty products were just not as available in the US. So thinking about how to introduce that into the US market, that was something that required, like, it hadn't really been done before. So how do you educate consumers about snail mucin? How do you educate consumers about what an essence is and layering that essence and doing a sheet mask multiple times a week? Like, there's a lot of education required. And then separately, I had never worked for a beauty company before. So I had no playbook. I hadn't worked at L'Oreal or Estee Lauder, you know, and so I was like, I'm just going to build a business that kind of makes sense, right? And so up until a year ago, or about 18 months ago, we hadn't had anybody who actually came from the beauty industry in like our marketing roles or our sales roles. Like, we just, there was no playbook. And so even our Peach and Lily collection, the formulas are really innovative because I just didn't know better. Like, I went to the labs and I was like, this is what we need to make. And they're like, the way that it works is you have to bring a comp. And I was like, no, there's no comp out there because I just can't find it. So we need to create it like this. And I brought a binder of research. They're like, nobody does it this way. But long story short, after a lot of labs saying no, and you know, I knew, okay, this is how other brands do it. I just don't think that's how we want to formulate, because we have 1,500 ingredients we don't want. We have clinically proven ingredients we do want. We have, you know, off the shelf solutions we need to create. This needs to be spa grade. It needs to be okay for people with all skin types. And finally, this one lab finally agreed to work with us. But for a historic first, even though this lab has a lot of big clients, this lab agreed that for our brand, every single of their 40 chemists would create the brand with us. And so, you know, sometimes I realized, I was like, it kind of pays off sometimes to not know what you're doing, because you get to be really innovative in a bold way, right? And not compromise your standards. So yeah, that's I guess how it all unfolded in terms of my career path.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. I feel like there is so much to unpack there. And what I love about having the two of you on this panel together is that I see a lot of commonality in your stories and your passion and the way you kind of approach innovation within your brands. And one thing that I wanted to touch on from kind of both of your introductions is, where do the inputs for innovation come from? Melanie, you talked about, you know, accessing and tapping into the community pre even the idea of Verse. Like, what do you want? What do you need? That's something that we've been seeing a lot within our clients as well. And the influencer community is really the importance of opening a dialogue. So would love to talk to you about that. And then Alicia, would love to kind of dig in a little bit to the importance of outside perspective. I think this like breaking with convention idea is so interesting. And again, something that, you know, both of you have really driven in your own brands and your own rights, from, you know, the democratization of clean skincare within a drugstore and creating accessibility, or bringing products and practices over from cultures that, you know, we can learn from, that are new. So if we can start with, again, what are the inputs for innovation at your brands today? And then how do you harness those to continue to, you know, make change and move forward?
Yeah, well, exactly like you said. I mean, our superpower is community, and community, I feel like it's the brand buzzword of the year. But for us, it means something very tangible and very functional. And it was always a part of our CEO's DNA, Catherine Powers, and she had been co-creating with community for over a dozen years. And really, I think what we all have coalesced behind is the belief that consumers want to be involved in their brands. They know best what their needs and challenges are, and why not listen to them directly instead of making decisions in a airtight boardroom and, you know, cutting that end consumer out of it. So for us, it's something that we leaned into in a very deliberate way, and expected it to really help drive that innovation. We took the position of not wanting to create innovation for innovation's sake, because I think that's one thing that we heard from the community, that there's so much new. It's like, what does it all mean? Like, it's new, but is it better? Do I need it? Is it right for my skin? How do I use it? So rather than just hammering that message, we really wanted to build everything with that community in mind. And we started with an incredible process that was created around product development. which taps first passive listening from a community of, it started with 16 million, now collectively between Who, What, Where, and Verse, we reach over 30 million people per month. And we learn from what articles they click on, what products do they put in their shopping cart, what ones do they check out with, what do they say in their product reviews to really understand their need state. And then we couple that with this active co-creation, which is this incredible process of, really inviting people in and asking them to be a part of our brand through the focus groups. And we have a private Facebook group, and we've had to date over 20,000 people actively join us at that development table through those different mechanisms. And for me, I think this is where I go back to my roots in science, that it's really about like using the scientific method and using that passive listening. We create a hypothesis that people, they want a cleanser, but they need it for sensitive skin, and it still has to get off all their makeup, and it has to be free of these ingredients. And then using that active co-creation, that's where we're really able to refine that hypothesis and understand if it's in fact true, or if we want to make changes to it. And it creates this really incredible feedback loop. And oftentimes we're, kind of going back and forth between those stages to really make sure that what we're putting out there is what they want. And that was a very deliberate step that we took. And again, it was really about just listening to the consumer and seeing that, especially in clean beauty. 3 years ago, when we started working on this brand, it was an undeniable trend movement, but it was for kind of the chosen few, if not the 1%, the 10%, the people that were lucky enough to have a Sephora in their city, or had $250 in discretionary income to drop on a regimen, or were willing to sit down for 2 hours and Google ingredients to know what the difference between squalene and squalene is. And, for us, we saw that this mass consumer, which is who we were talking to, and they account for 90% of consumers in the market, they saw what was happening for clean beauty, and they wanted to be a part of it, but they thought it wasn't for them. Either they didn't have the right access, the right income, it just felt too hard to understand. And really that confusion was a huge, just like Pandora's box around skincare that we opened this, idea of, is it right for me? How do I use it? What do I need to know about it? What does all this ingredient stuff mean? So while we started thinking that we would use this community to empower our product development, really they became the North Star for the whole brand, from things like developing the icon system that's on every single one of our products that codes any product in our assortment to the 4 most common concerns from our community. So if you're shopping in a Target, or if you're shopping online, you know that this item is great for aging and this item is great for dehydration. And what I love most of all about this community-driven platform is that it's brought us so much closer to the community, and really it's about building empathy. It's never about this one decision I have to make tomorrow and I want to make it the right decision. It's about really bridging that gap between brand and consumer, that traditionally there was so many middlemen and so much time and space between. But if we can close that gap, we just know so much better how to serve them, and they feel so much more connected to us. And to me, that's really what modern brands are about, breaking down that third wall and being a lot more human as a brand than in past. So that's a little bit about how we think about innovation, and really use that community to guide what that means for us.
Absolutely. I think one follow-up question that I would have to that is, who's at the other side of the table when you have these kind of community conversations, this co-creation process? Who at your business, that your brand, is on the other side of the table engaging with
every single person? It permeates every single function, every single role. Everyone in our company is their own data scientist, and they have their own processes and points that they involve the community in the work that they do. So if it's an art director, she might tap into the community to help cast models. If it's our product development director, they'll tap into the community to review formulas. Same goes with, everything from our education team to our retail team. And again, it's become something that really permeates the culture, and we seek people that want to listen, that want to connect, that want to empathize. And that's become a really important part of our culture.
Alicia, I would love to hear from you in terms of educating. So I think when we talk about innovation, we're often talking about new territory, and you talked a lot about that in your story and in this story of Peach and Lily. how do you approach education for your consumers? And what does that look like? You know, what does that process look like behind the scenes for your brand?
Yeah, so I really agree with what Melanie said about how innovation, yes, innovation is new and it's different, but it also needs to be better and relevant, right? Like it has to meet a need. And I do think that definitely being in the Korean beauty space and really pioneering this like movement in the US, I can't even count the number of times that I'll get like emails or questions that are just sort of like, what's the newest coming out of Korea? And I'm like, I don't know if that's like the most relevant question, right? It's more like, what's sort of like the best things we should know about that's going to be relevant, right? And so, first and foremost, even when we're educating on the innovation, so we have like kind of like two broader processes that are happening in the background. So, number one, there is this constant connection with our community. So, from day one of the business, we've had this service called Ask Lily, and it's a play on Peach and Lily. And basically, anyone who has a skincare question, you don't have to be a customer. You don't even have to have an email account with us. You could be literally anyone emailing from anywhere in the world. And any skincare question, you ask Lily at peachandlily.com, and it's 100% complimentary. And only our in-house licensed estheticians are answering those questions. There's no algorithm, there's no bot. And that was kind of a crazy decision. But that was, again, with this passion of like, when skincare is so powerful, you really need to match the right products with the right people. And our estheticians, their performance metrics, for example, are unrelated to sales, right? They are not, it's not about like, did you sell something? It's about how helpful were you? Were you responsive? Were you timely? Did you, if, for example, they have some sort of issue that there's, literally they need to go to the doctor. There's like nothing they should even be shopping at this point. That's the right answer, right? And so that like there's like this like separation. So this esthetician service from day one has become this extremely rich source of qualitative information that I will read through periodically, like super intensively, because as our world changes, even this year, as the world has changed, your skincare needs also change. Just generalities like there's mask need, but specifically, I'm very curious to read people's notes on, I don't even go out that often and I just wear my mask a couple times a week and my skin is still irritated, right? Like, what's the actual skincare need out there right now where there isn't a solution? So that qualitative information is where we both know there needs to be an innovation to solve for that, but also how we need to educate, right? Because there's also a million things you can educate your community on. And if it's like nobody asked that question, it's like not relevant. So even education, we want to really hit it on the nose and be like, this is something that's coming up a lot. Let's address that. So that's like one part. The other part that I think is so fun is, where there is, just where really, really, we keep our finger on the pulse, like extensively. So we have a very vast network of labs, top chemists, in Korea primarily, who we are in constant touch with, including ingredient suppliers, right? So like sometimes the real innovation is happening that's not even at a lab, but like a different kind of lab where they then like sell the ingredients so that all of a sudden it's possible to preserve a product in a gentler way. So we're constantly speaking to all of these labs. And that was also funny because when Peach and Lily first started, we didn't have our own branded products, and that wasn't even really the goal. But I was meeting with all of these labs and chemists because I was curious, like what's coming out that's potentially going to be launched by a brand that we really need to know about because we're seeing these issues. And so what's really fascinating is because we have this part where we're understanding what our community is really needing and where they see a gap, right? Because some needs already have a great solution, right? So the ones that come up over and over again, like I'm really not finding something for this, it's like a very specific, need that we have in our mind. And when we talk to all of the labs and chemists and so forth, that's how we filter, right? Because there's actually a dizzying rate of innovation happening in Korea where it's like, oh my gosh, and everything can sound super cool because it's never been done before, right? I'm like, wait, what? And then that melts into what? And like your skin then tingles, but like what need is that solving, right? And so we really dig into their studies and their results to understand like, okay, that's interesting. So you actually saw the stratum corneum thicken and you actually saw the cell turnover like increase. Like, how did that happen? And so I think the two, like constantly keeping your finger on the pulse so that you can actually create solutions that are innovative and going to offer a fresh, different, better solution, but also like what is the need? So I think those are the two areas that we really keep in mind and stay on top of. And both in creating and educating and curating, we apply that.
That makes a lot of sense. I love the idea of a filter for innovation possibility. And I think that, you know, coming back to this idea of really listening, of assessing and identifying the needs and of rising to the occasion for your customer, for your business is really important. I know just before this call, we were talking about, you know, all of the other ways that you can innovate outside of just product development. Specifically, our conversation was about, you know, how do we build an environment and foster a culture in a, you know, COVID and hopefully someday post-COVID world. And one of the things that stood out in kind of our collective experience was this assumption that our teams would be kind of rushing to get back to the office when we open them up. And then the realization that actually, no, people are maybe more okay working from home than we had imagined. And so I'd love to hear from you about what other areas of innovation you're focusing on right now from, you know, a business standpoint, from a recruitment and team building standpoint, from a marketing standpoint. So outside of product development, you know, what areas are kind of ripe for innovation right now, and what are you focusing on? And Alicia, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, one thing that's been really great this year is one of the things that, you know, with our mission on empowering people to help transform their skin, we thought, okay, you know, as a company, we also have some sort of social responsibility, right? Like we can make a really positive impact or negative impact. So when we think, how do we make a positive impact in our community? Our mission is empowering people. And there are some people who are the most disempowered in our community, right? And so what can we do there in teaming up with a nonprofit organization? So we did a lot of vetting and searching, and I think it's about 6 years ago now, we partnered with a nonprofit called Restore New York City. And they are like a best-in-class nonprofit that makes a big impact. And what they do is they seek to stop sex trafficking. And New York City is one of the most highly sex trafficked states and cities. And it's like literally watching a terror movie, right? It's so scary because it's like a web of evil, right? You actually have to work with the FBI, with the NYPD, with Interpol, with a lot of organizations to take down organizations behind this. And then the nonprofit will actually then help restore the survivors, right? So you don't just kind of, you know, like get them out of the system, but then you also provide like education training and so forth so that they can lead safe, autonomous lives. And you know, it's something that we take really seriously because, you know, we have the opportunity as a company to really expand our mission and help empower people in a whole different way. That's kind of authentic to us as well, right? Also, we're based in New York and we can get involved with the organization in a lot of different ways. And what's been really great is we think a lot also about how to help make an impact for this important cause that Restore New York City is behind. So, you know, over the years, we've done a lot of different things, you know, including like hosting their, you know, workshops in our office, you know, definitely giving back where we can. Last year, we were actually one of their biggest financial donors, you know, really getting behind it. But this year, what we realized is there's this opportunity also to engage more about it, right? Because people are consuming more information and content and, you know, like even storytelling around like how crazy this issue is, right? Like I didn't know before I met Restore New York City that I could be in the subway and there could be a woman who looks just dressed like she's going to work and she's actually a sex trafficked victim, right? They're actually not behind like bars, and it's like a system of fear and misinformation that keeps women in these positions oftentimes. And so, you know, I think this year, really understanding like, and I wouldn't say it's like innovation, but it's more understanding the different ways that we can connect with our community and engage them and storytell them, different initiatives that we're doing. And it's been really phenomenal to see our community really rally behind certain causes. So we had at one point, for example, we were like listening, okay, what's our community needs? Maskne is an issue, like they want to restore their skin. So we made this like restore collection, but 100% of the proceeds from that went to restore New York City. So not only are we listening to the needs and like really curating the products that our estheticians are hand selecting, but on top of that, we're then also saying, okay, people actually want that inside information on how this made an impact, right? So sharing more stories from Restore New York City. So just finding different ways that we can piece different platforms together to make a bigger impact without necessarily, you know, having to throw like a huge event at the Met Stadium or something like that, right? So I think we've been this year especially thinking long and hard about how to make more of an impact. And it's, I guess that is a very different kind of innovation. It's just like creative thinking on how to connect with your community, amplify certain messages, and listen more and, you know, engage and have that dialogue. So that's like, I think one example that has been, you know, like a thing that's the pandemic has actually both necessitated and encouraged this like way of thinking even more creatively.
Yeah, that's a great example. I would love, Melanie, if you could provide an example or two of your experiences at Verse. I think this idea of like, you know, adversity breeds opportunity, these surprises that we weren't, you know, expecting to come away with during, you know, this kind of disruptive time. Have there been any examples at Verse of interesting kind of silver linings or areas of innovation that you know, probably would not have happened should we have carried on?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's I feel like such a big question. I think we've been very fortunate to have built our brand with the future in mind, a future where consumers want incredible products but don't want to pay huge markups on them, when they want to buy them from the retailers that they're already going to instead of having to make a special trip to a specialty retailer, when they want to, you know, buy products that are clean and are more sustainable, and feel like those products and brands are representing their own values. And we have certainly seen those behaviors accelerate with COVID, which is, you know, it's certainly a silver lining. I think as humans, our team and everyone around us, we're all in crisis. We're all in pain, even the fortunate ones that have not had themselves or their family members directly, you know, impacted by COVID. It's an incredibly unsettling time as a human. And, you know, by seeing that accelerated has given us the opportunity to lean even more into those values as something that brings a little bit more impact to our lives, a little bit more kind of sense of control. You know, I can do something, I can create some good in this world that honestly, just this year, this world seems crazy. So it does. So I think sustainability is just one thing to call out, and it's always been a part of our roadmap, and it's something that we all push hard on, that I in particular, I push hard on. And, you know, I think it's impossible not to see it as a global imperative right now, with record-breaking wildfires around the world, with our, you know, 150 species going extinct every single day. And this being the hottest year on record, I mean, you name it, you can't look the other way. And while those are just so heartbreaking to see, because that's what's happening, we can't stop those things. We see now that we're fighting for the future. We're fighting to cap global warming at a point that leaves 10% of our coral reefs instead of wiping them out completely, and prevents 1 billion more people from having their water supply threatened from lack of snowmelt and glacier loss. And to be able to align that with what we're coming in and doing, I want to say 40 hours a week, but I know my team and I know it's a lot more than 40 hours a week. You know, I think I didn't anticipate how incredible that would feel to be able to share that with these people that you lock arms with day in, day out. So that is an area that every day we're pushing and raising the bar across every aspect of our business. From the materials that we use in our packaging, this year we've made a big shift into not just recyclable, but post-consumer recycled plastic. So we've taken that waste out of the landfill waste stream before we've even done anything, shifting out of our single-use plastic pouches and moving those into paper, sourcing 100% of our paper through Forest Stewardship Council certified partners, so they're not contributing to deforestation and forest degradation, which threatens both the communities and animals that rely on forests, but also is a significant cause of global warming. And we're also now really, over a 6-month process, we've been able to assess our climate impact as a company, really from cradle to gate, from every aspect of what we're doing. And we made the commitment at the beginning of the year to become carbon neutral by the end of the year. And we're going to have an announcement on that real soon. But honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And really a problem like sustainability is so broad and complex that you are wrong to focus on just one thing. And I think that has been the incredible outcoming of this process, that by inviting more people into it to share this mission and add to it, it ends up being so much more broad than me as one person could drive. So we have people who identified opportunities to reduce the waste use in our pack out, which happens before it even reaches the consumer. We've identified opportunities to reduce emissions in our transportation, to educate the consumer more so that they are recycling every item to its fullest potential. And we see the impact we're having. We see, the changes that we've been able to make this year. And those feel so good. Those are awesome, incredible wins to celebrate, to share with our community, seeing how interested and active people are, because we're kind of going through this journey on our own as well, like at home. How do I live more sustainably? What am I doing that has an impact? And really, there has not been a lot of information out there, certainly for brands. I don't know, Alicia, if you feel this, but oh my gosh, we're all trying to piece together this data and missing information to understand what our current impact is and what the best path forward is. So really, to have more people involved in that, to have your community involved in that, to have other brand founders pick up the phone and say, hey, like I found this amazing recycled material component vendor, like try them. That is part of the change, because it's firstly the consumer demand that has made it possible for businesses to prioritize these things. And it's also then the kind of joined demand of all these brands, that when we're all asking for better data, for better materials, for better solutions, those all of a sudden there's a market for them. So that's been a continuing journey, and one that has only, really deepened through COVID.
Yeah, I think that's so incredibly important. You both talked about, identifying an area of impact and covering it in all possible angles, both the obvious, the subtle, the ones we don't even know about, and just continuing to kind of pursue that potential impact and make it deeper and broader. I think, we're just a few minutes away from the end of the panel, and there are a couple of audience questions. I think, building off of this pursuit of sustainability and the importance of brands joining together in this collective pursuit. What can brands do early on? And specifically, audience question from Gabriella, what is the role of certifications for sustainability, and what certifications do you think brands need to have?
Yeah, Gabriella, amazing question. I think what brands can do early on is bring their stakeholders in on the decision, because really our board supports us on this, our community support us, our retailers support us on these. And the reality is a lot of these things, they cost a little bit more, they take a little bit longer, they take more of your time. So it's really important to have that stakeholder buy-in so that everyone recognizes that this is moving us closer to that goal. I think certifications, we're starting to see more out there. Climate neutral is a certification that's specific to greenhouse gas impact that's out there. As I mentioned, we work with the Forest Stewardship Council, which certifies against deforestation. There are certifications for, kind of loop-based waste programs like TerraCycle, TerraFill. So I think certifications are important when they help the consumer. And in reality, there's a lot of legwork for the consumer to do. So when a certification is able to create a robust standard and really push that education out to the consumer, that's education that then I don't need to do. And, you know, this brand doesn't need to do that. We can just focus on the solution. And really what I would love to see is us as a brand be able to focus more on the solution and putting our funds, time, and resources there. And, you know, not having to put as much into third-party partners that help with validation and, you know, creating this demand and awareness. So I think they are a very important part of that, you know, kind of broader move towards these items. And there are key areas that we really haven't seen those partners yet, you know, kind of come to life.
And I love what you said earlier, Melanie, about just the supplier side, because it has been really eye-opening to see the power of brands. You know, all of our products are 100% recyclable or biodegradable. And like, it was very interesting to see, like, wow, as a client, there's actual real power. And to actually go to Korea to say, absolutely not, we can't do it unless it's actually using, you know, this material. And actually one of the suppliers told me, you know, I wasn't that interested in looking into this until last year. I went to an exhibition and like every brand was telling me this. And now this supplier is investing like this entire facility in making sure that it's like the right material and so forth. And so that was really eye-opening to me, because it's really like the suppliers need to provide those materials to make this a reality. And I just love what you said about like the power of brands getting together to be like, this is actually no longer just like a request, we're demanding this. And then they'll get it done. It's a little bit slower, but and I'm excited to see a lot of the innovation happening in making sure that there's better sustainable packaging. But for sure, exactly to what you're saying, it is so hard to measure because it's not as straightforward as like, you know, we ship things from Korea. Glass is heavy to ship. You know, there's like a carbon footprint impact there with like transportation. So it's so complex. But I think exactly to your point, like it also starts with like what's realistic, and those suppliers are so key. And I think a lot of the suppliers, I'm excited because they've like heard the message. You know, they're like, we're on it, we're figuring it out. So yeah, I think that's really something a brand can do for sure to like advocate for the whole industry also.
Well, we are unfortunately at the end of our time. We could carry on this conversation and continue to get your insights for hours. Really appreciate the time, the experience. I think for me, circling back to kind of our original goal of exploring the intersection of impact and innovation, it seems like those two are intricately linked, and you really need to achieve and pursue those in lockstep. And the common themes of curiosity, collaboration, and drive as business owners, as brands, and as consumers. If we put our voices together, we can really make a change. So appreciate the change you guys are both making in the world and in your industry, and appreciate you spending the time with us today, sharing a little bit about that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.